You hit the toga switch, set thrust, thrust set, 80 knots, checks, V1, rotate. There you go. Like, that's it. You're up in the air.
Welcome aboard, aviation enthusiasts. I'm Aaron Sloper, call sign Slopey. Today we have the pleasure of soaring through the skies with a remarkable individual whose aviation journey began at the age of 12. Join us on this episode as we navigate the incredible story of Moriah. From earning multiple aviation certifications to flying for PSA Airlines, Moriah's journey is a testament to perseverance and passion in the face of adversity. Buckle up as we take flight through her inspiring story and uncover the sky-high achievements of this phenomenal aviator. All here today on this episode of From the Right Seat. Hi there, Moriah. Welcome to From the Right Seat podcast. Tell us who you are and what is your story.
So my name is Moriah. I am 26. I am from a little town in Delaware, and I'm a first officer for PSA Airlines. As far as my story is concerned, I wanted to fly from a pretty young age. I was around 12 when a cousin of mine in Delaware went to a high school that had a pilot program. And I was like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. So that's perfect. I'll do that. I was a bit, I don't know if I would call it delusional, but I just had parents that would encourage me to do anything. I'd be like, I want to rule the world. And my mom and dad would be like, yeah, sure, you can do it. Like, whatever you want. Yeah, but it actually ended up working out because the high school is a pretty big deal to get into. Not anymore. Now it's a lottery system, but back when I was about 12 or 13 and I applied to be a freshman, you had to have a home interview. So they would come to your house and interview you. Yeah. And discuss like what you do for fun, what your goals are, like what your parents do. So I just remember it being such a big deal that the house was neat and tidy. And we had, all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted because it was a big deal. And I ended up getting in. And I set my eyes on the flight program and I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to do that. For a brief moment, I considered cosmetology because you've seen me. I love hair. I have a lot of it. And I love all things nails and makeup. The flight attendants are always like, oh my God, your nails. And my captains are like, how do you fly with those? And I'm like, oh, well, I just do it. But I decided, no, I'm sticking with aerospace science, ROTC, because that's what I want to do. And so I got into the program. I had to interview for it again, lots of interviews. I had to do a test.
Almost like you were getting into Hogwarts or something.
You would have thought it was like a program adjacent to special forces or something, the way they were interviewing people. It felt a lot like I did drama growing up. It felt a lot like auditions. And when they posted the names on who got in, it was like the call sheet of everybody who got the leading roles, who got the extras. Yeah. And so after my interview, I was 14 or 15 at the time, 14, because I was a freshman. I got into the flying program. And how it worked was as a freshman, you interviewed, you got into the program, you didn't start flying until your junior year because you have to be 16 to get a student pilot certificate. So it didn't make sense for you to start earlier than that.
Right.
When I got into the program, I should probably forget this memory, but I talked about it in the post. I do remember how it happened. It wasn't, not everybody was as happy for me as I was happy for me. I did have a kid, and I'm like 15 at the time, so very young and impressionable. He turned to me and said, yeah, it's because you're Black. That's why you got here, because they have to have diversity. So that's why they let you in. And I tried to shake it off. I was like, what? No. And I just laughed it off. But the reality was I was the only Black person who did apply for the program. And so I kind of thought to myself, like, oh, is there some merit to what he's saying? But anyways, I decided that I was going to stick with flying no matter what people said. So I kept flying, and not all of this was included in the post, but I was actually at the bottom of my class. Like, I was doing terrible. Like, I was failing practice tests for the FAA written. I just was really bad. I had no clue what was going on. I was absolutely clueless. But I just set my sights on, I want to do this. So I'm just going to keep going, even if I suck at it right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I kept going. I kept going through the program. I kept going through the training. Eventually, I started getting better. And eventually, I would solo and do different things. And my best friend at the time actually said that she heard somebody from the ROTC program talking about me in class saying, oh, somebody should just tell Moriah that flying is not for her and she's wasting her time and her money. Um, and so it really affected me negatively. And that really contributed to why I performed so poorly, because in the back of my mind, every time I messed up, oh my God, they're right. They're right. I'm here because I'm a diversity hire. I'm here because, they need somebody to to bring in the diversity, and I'm wasting my time. I shouldn't be here. Um, but I kept going. My parents were super supportive. They were like, like, just keep pushing through it. And so I kept pushing through it, and eventually I got better and better and better. And there were 11 people in the program. Only 3 of us got their pilot's license in high school, and I was one of them.
Really?
Yeah, there were 11
Wow.
people. They kicked 8 people out because they
Wow.
weren't flying as much. They weren't taking it seriously. They weren't doing well. So I went from being at the bottom of my class to being in the top 3.
Yeah.
Um, and once I finished, I had no idea that I, like, was making history. I was just kind of existing, kind of a pattern of mine. I have no idea I'm making these waves. I just kinda live my life and see what happens. And so I definitely could not have done it without the support of my friends and my parents. And once I found out that I was gonna be inducted into the Delaware Aviation Hall of Fame, I was like, "Oh, wait, what? Like, I did that?" Like, I was just living my life. And so looking back on it, it really was an experience that shaped who I am today, getting my private. Of course, I've gotten many licenses since then, 6 or 7, I think, um, including my AGI, but I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot, like, the grit that it took to get to where I am, because it doesn't stop. Uh, Airline training is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's been described as mental P90X. Um, so my block for my airline training was 8 PM to 3 AM. So by midnight, your brain is just, it's mush. Once midnight hits, you're not thinking clearly. You see the 1,000 feet, you're supposed to do the 1,000 foot call out. It just blows right past you.
Hmm.
You just miss.
Wow.
Yeah. But overall, yeah, that's pretty much my story. I got my private in high school. I went to Embry-Riddle. I trained there. That was also difficult. I came to the airlines and did my training here, and that was also difficult. But
Mm-hmm.
now I'm flying and I'm on the line and I love it. And every time I get into a plane, I just thank God, because I really am just so blessed to be where I am, and so blessed to be excel in a field where so many people told me I didn't belong. So I just think it's awesome.
That is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So why aviation and why the airlines? What drove you in that direction?
Aviation, because I originally wanted to be an astronaut. That was my
Right.
goal. I was like, I'm going to do that. And so that is actually why I joined the aerospace RTC program. It's pretty convenient of me to have done that, because I was going to do the Air Force and they picked the best test pilots to go to astronaut school. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is great. And I was gonna, be a geologist as well. I really love science. I really love rocks. Super nerd over here. I wouldn't admit it to your face. If this were in person, I would deny it. Um, but long story short, I had asthma as a kid and was still actually taking medication for my asthma. It wasn't until 2020 that I stopped taking asthma medication, because I became a runner, so I kind of grew out of it.
Oh, okay.
And that's obviously a big no, um, for the Air Force, especially if you want to be a military pilot. So I couldn't get a waiver. By the time I had figured that out, I already had my private, actually. My high school had paid for my private. So I was like, I might as well just stick with it and keep going and go to the airlines, because it's what I want to do. I already have the first class medical. I might as well just stick with it. So
How did you discover the opportunity to pursue your private pilot's license in high school? Like that's it's like an unheard of. Was it like a
Right?
vocational
I paid
school
for it,
or
everything.
like,
Yeah. So I went to school, you don't have to include this if you don't want to, but if you do, I don't care. It's on the internet called Polytech in Woodside, Delaware, and it actually was nicknamed the dumb people school because that's where you go if you don't want to go to college because it's a
oh,
vocational school. So they had
right.
cosmetology, they had CAD, computer aided drafting, dental school, physical therapy, like whatever you wanted, they had. Um, and they also had a flying program because our principal was retired Air Force and he loved flying, was super passionate about it. And I actually forgot to include this part in my like private pilot story, but halfway through the program, the principal that we had retired and a different principal came in and he was like, I'm shutting down this program. It's too expensive. And so I'm halfway through, I'm towards the end of my private. And he was like, "If you have this stage 3 check and you fail the stage 3 check and you're out of the program, that's it." I don't know if you fly a lot or just like an aviation enthusiast, but it's really easy to like fail one thing for a stage 3 check when it's your first license and you're like and you're 16 years old, right? So I did fail, and he actually did kick me out of the program. Um, and so I wasn't even supposed to finish my private because he kicked me out. And I was like, I really just want to keep going. I think you should reconsider. I can get it on the second try. Like, I know I can. And he was like, well, you should just be proud of how far you've come, basically. And so I was blessed enough to have parents that would go to the ends of the earth for me. So, naturally, my mom did what any mom of an only child would do, and she went to the school and threatened the principal, and my mom is 5 foot nothing, very tiny, but she is incredibly terrifying.
Hmm.
So, needless to say, after one meeting, I was back in the program, and that and that was it.
Came home. You're good, honey.
That pretty much, yeah. I was like, "How did the meeting go?" She was like, "Oh, yeah, you're seeing your instructor again tomorrow." And I was like, "What?"
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, that's pretty much how it happened. We had a vocational school and a principal at the time who was just really like he really into aviation, really wanted to see young kids pursue it. And I am forever indebted to his name is Dr. Curry. I'm forever indebted to him because had Polytech not paid for my private, I probably wouldn't be here. So,
Hmm. As the first Black female to complete the high school program and be inducted into the Delaware Aviation Hall of Fame, which is huge, at age 17, no less, what challenges did you face being the only person of color in the program, and how did you navigate those obstacles?
I would say the challenges I faced, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but the biggest challenges I faced were inside of myself, kind of like battling the can I do it, can I not? And that didn't end with my private pilot. It continued until my airline training. It wasn't until I believed that I could do something that I began to excel in doing something. I would have instructors say things like, "Wow, that was great," or "You did so good," and I'd be like, "I mean, yeah, but I could have done this better. I could have done that more." I think when you start flying at such a young age with the personality I have of being a perfectionist, like, there is nothing that is ever good enough. And some challenges, I didn't get to do everything that other kids did. Even still, I didn't get to do everything that other adults did in college. There are times where I can't go to family functions because it's like, "Hey, I'm sitting reserve," or "I'm working," or "I'm doing this," or "I'm doing that." So, I'd say the biggest challenges I faced were mental, and then in terms of just life adjustments, sacrifice, dedication, hard work. That's what came with it, which seems like a pretty, like, cheesy answer, and to some people, it may not be a big deal, but to me, it is. There are some pretty big moments in college that I missed, because I had a flight and couldn't cancel her because I was working, outside of college, so
Hmm. Awesome. How did your experience at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University shape your perspective and skills as a pilot and flight instructor?
ooh, that's a loaded question. People say riddle pilots can't fly. I agree.
You
Um
indeed.
Yeah, you and D guys are pretty good. I'd say Riddle is like oh gosh, they gave me a lot of money, so I shouldn't say too much. I would say Riddle is kind of like a my running joke is I'm factory farmed. You know, they have a cookie cutter way of doing things, and if you don't do it the cookie cutter way, you're wrong, you're this, you're that. So I would say that going to Embry-Riddle shaped my skills as a pilot, as I'm pretty quick on my feet. I'm pretty good at adjusting. Um, I'm pretty good at kind of like catering. I had to kind of change my learning style to fit the instructor's teaching style, because I just think differently from a lot of pilots and the way that they teach. So they would teach me things and I'd go home and reteach myself and be like, okay, well, he said this and he said that. But I think going to Embry-Riddle gave me an incredibly solid foundation. There are things that I know that when I instructed at other flight schools, because I didn't instruct at Embry-Riddle. So when I went to instruct at other flight schools, there are things that I know that they didn't know. So people were able to come to me to ask, hey, Moriah, how does this work? Or how does that work? Or tell me this about the atmosphere, because you took 2 classes on weather and I'm just a Part 61 guy, things like that. Um, so I would say my knowledge of subject matter such as aerodynamics, weather, systems, all of that. I knew a lot of aircraft systems for like the CRJ and Boeing and things like that before I even got to the airlines, just because they make you take a class on it. And I knew a lot about aerodynamics because they make you take a class on it. So it gave me a really good foundation, which I was able to give to my students as well. I think also because I went to Embry-Riddle and I have a type A personality, I'm incredibly strict. And the running joke was that I hit my students. I never hit my students, like physically. I never hit them. But the running joke was that I was the tough instructor, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, like you're so tough," and I'd be like, "I am literally just asking you for the ACS standards, like
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
literally just asking for the bare minimum." But it was the way that I did it. With a lot of at Embry-Riddle, they teach you like don't take your hand off the throttle. And so with my students, it was don't take your hand off the throttle. And here I am at the airlines. A lot of the captains, even the ones that went to Riddle, make fun of me because I don't take my hand off the throttle. Off the thrust levers. I keep 2 fingers, 2 freshly manicured fingers on the thrust lever when I fly. Um, and sometimes captains will like put their fingers there and just poke at it and make fun of me. And I'm just like, you can take the girl out Embry Riddle, but you can't take any Embry Riddle out the girl.
That's
So
right. That's right. Good habits
yeah.
go a long ways.
Mhm.
Can you share any memorable experiences or lessons that significantly impacted your journey during your time at the university or even in high school?
Memorable experiences. My first cross country solo, I had a friend. I was so terrified, right? I'm taking this plane from here to where? My first cross country solo was to, oh my God, where was I? I don't even remember. I'd have to look it up. It's been years. Probably either Lancaster or Atlantic City, New Jersey. Um, but I had a friend and she actually did the same solo before me. And so she wrote down this sheet. It was called like Words of Wisdom. She meant to write wisdom, but she wrote wins and just kept going. So it became our running thing. Whenever I like needed advice or help, she would say, "Oh, these are my words of wisdom." But um
It's fitting.
yeah, right? Yeah, so she wrote everything down, was like, "Okay, you're gonna take off, and this is what you're gonna do, and then you're gonna land here, and this is what you're gonna do, and then you do this, and you're gonna do that." And so whenever I got nervous or got lost, I would pull out the paper that she wrote for me, and I would look at the paper and be like, "Okay, this is what I'm supposed to do now," and I would, like, do it and keep going, and once, like, the nerves went away and I was able to think clearly, things went really smooth. Up until the point where my last cross country solo during my private, I went lost comms, and I'm in, like, the middle of nowhere, and I don't know anything about, um, losing radios just because I don't even remember. I couldn't figure out like the squad codes. There was no like 75 taken alive. It was just like they were just numbers at that point. Because I was freaking out. So eventually after about like 15 minutes, I just did like a turn it off and turn it back on, and someone else was able to hear me after that. And so they were telling like approach what I was saying. And so by the time approach got to me, I was already out of their airspace, so I just left. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would say that's the first and only time I've been in a plane and I've been like, "Oh my god, what do I do?" And I've had some pretty like crazy stuff happen, like playing with thunderstorms and, fuel and being overweight. And the first flight school I ever instructed at was in the FRZ right
Mm-hmm.
next to Andrews Air Force Base in DC. So I've been through some stuff, but I think that takes the cake on like how scared I am. So that was pretty memorable, I'd
That's
say.
awesome. What was the first plane you ever flew?
I 172.
Okay. And how old were you?
The first time I went up, I was 15.
Okay.
The first time I started taking lessons, I was 16.
Okay. Did they do the in the high school, did they do the like the $100 discovery flight or whatever it was?
Yeah, but since they paid for our training, like everything was free. I just paid $25 a month in like club fees.
Nice. That's
So
awesome.
you can't beat that. Yeah.
No.
Mhm.
No, you can't. You mentioned grappling with internal challenges related to stereotypes and perceptions. How did you manage to overcome these mental barriers and find your stride in the aviation industry?
This is gonna sound so cheesy. And so like
I'm here for it.
I don't know if it's gonna sound pretentious. It might not sound good, but it's the truth, honestly. Um, the biggest things that helped me were A, having friends that encouraged me, and having friends that were where I wanted to be so I could ask them for help and lean on them for guidance. I have friends from college that fly for PSA, and whenever I have questions about PSA, I'm like, "Hey, like, crew scheduling just did this to me. Like, is this legal? Can I say no?" Like, things like that. Um, and also, like, just a lot of prayer and just a lot of, like, positive reinforcement within myself. I had, like, a moment in my airline training in my car after, like, a really bad lesson, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't do this." And apparently everybody has that in their airline training where they're like, "Oh my god, I can't do this." Um, and I just thought about, all the lessons I failed in my, like, flight training to get to this point, and I thought of all the things that anyone had ever said to me, and I was like, "You know what? They're right. Like, this is stupid. Like, I am struggling so hard. I feel so stupid." I was like, "I can't do this." Um, and I have, like, the Bible app on my phone, um, and while I was in my car, like, sobbing, I got, like, a notification. It sent me, like it's on, like, a timer, so it sends, like, scriptures and stuff like that, and the scripture for that day was Isaiah 43, and it I forget, like, what it is verbatim, but it's basically like, "Behold, I'm doing a new thing. Like, have you not seen it? I've already begun." And it's like, "I will make a way through the wilderness, like, you will walk through the fire, you won't be burned." Like yeah, Isaiah 43:19,
Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert.
exactly, yeah. And so I was just, like, thinking, like, so hard about, like, the pilot I was in my training, and that pops up, and that tells me and it's God basically reminding me, like, I'm doing something completely new. That's how I took it. I took it
Mhm.
as, I'm doing something with you that has never been done before, and the translation that I, like, read was, "Do you not see it? Like, I've already begun, like, I've already started." And so here I am in the middle of my training feeling so like, "Oh my god, like, I can't do this." And it was like God's kind of, like, love letter to me saying, like, "I have already started doing something in you that you can't even, like, comprehend." And so it sounds kind of, like, cheesy to be like, "Oh, God helped you," but it's true. It took, like, a lot of, like, just prayer and, like, positivity to kind of, like, overcome that. Because even now, I'll have captains say some pretty, like, outlandish things. Um, One captain even told my friend, and I hate to keep bringing up, like, race and stuff like that. One captain told my friend, "Oh, slavery was good because it gave you guys skills."
Yes.
Yeah. So people will say things like that. And, how do you hear rhetoric like that for so long and not have it affect you, right? It takes that internal, like, encouragement. It takes that amount of, like, reaching for a higher power, whoever, whatever you believe in, to to come back from that. So definitely that is how I have and am continuing to overcome that, because it really, like, is a journey for me. Not everybody feels like that, obviously, but for me, it is a journey, so I just take it one day at a time.
That is definitely a barrier and a hurdle, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
You've achieved significant certifications at a relatively young age. What were some of the most pivotal moments or achievements in your career that you're particularly proud of?
Oh, this is a good one. I never really stop and smell the roses, right? Um, I'll keep this one short. My biggest accomplishments that I'm really proud of, I obviously am in the Delaware Aviation Hall of Fame. I was also American Airlines Distinguished Cadet.
Okay.
I was an OBAT Bessie Coleman Legacy Award recipient. Um, I was a Southwest Airlines scholarship recipient. I was a United Airlines scholarship recipient, and I was a PSA Airlines scholarship recipient. Um, and so I was also an intern at Southwest, so I think that was really cool.
Hmm.
Um, I think, like, all of those awards, like, they really meant a lot to me just because it was, like, just my way of, "Okay, I can do this. I need to keep going," you
Hmm.
know? So, yeah, that's it.
I'm
That's
sure
it, that's
there's
all.
more, but you're holding
Mhm.
back. How did your experience instructing in the Delaware tri-state area influence your approach to flying?
Ooh. We do a lot of DC operations, and, the first flight school I ever instructed at was in DC, inside the flight restricted zone, so just south of Andrews, we talked about that. Um, Southwest to the White House, I'd have to look at it on a map again, it's been so long, but, um so instructing there really gave me a really good perspective on DC operations, because my airline flies in and out of DC the most. So while people are afraid to fly out of DC or even get near that area, it didn't bother me. It wasn't it wasn't anything special. And instructing in Delaware gave me a really good rapport with Philly Approach, which is where I was based the first time I finished my airline training. So I would say instructing in those areas gave me the familiarity with that, so when I started flying in those areas, it wasn't a shock, or if, like, captains were ever confused on where we were, I could just look and say, "Hey, I know that bridge, like,
Mhm.
we need to go that way," or something like that.
What has your experience been like flying for PSA Airlines?
Flying for PSA has been one of the most exciting experiences of my life, I would say. Um Being on reserve sucks, but any airline you're gonna have reserve, it is what it is. But the positives definitely outweigh the negatives when it comes to flying for this airline. I've had a lot of captains who have been great, super helpful. Because I'm on reserve, I don't fly a lot, so sometimes I'll forget things or I'll mess up, and they're always super encouraging. So I never have to worry about I personally have never run into a captain where I've had to worry about them, like, "Ooh, are they okay?" I've
Mhm.
heard friends that have, but I've never had that experience, so for me personally, I would say it adds a lot of excitement to my life. It helps me fulfill my purpose, I think, because I love helping people. I love, like, being super helpful, so anytime I can transport somebody to a wedding or a graduation or it just helps me feel good. So,
It's awesome.
I love flying. Yeah.
Who doesn't love flying that flies?
Right? Oh my God.
Who doesn't love flying that flies? I don't ever hear anybody like, oh man, I gotta go fly again. It's like, come on, man. Like
Yeah.
you're defying the laws of gravity. Like
Yeah.
you're cheating physics. You're going places that no one else dares go. And the one of the most biggest fears in the world is flying,
It's fun.
and
Yeah.
we get to do it. You get to do it every day, and you get to be paid to do this.
I know I'm finally at the point where I get to be paid to fly, which even better.
But yeah, I remember particularly one day we were coming back from Wings Over Houston, actually, just before the crash. It was a month before the crash, and we were flying over like this area that I'm in right now, and over this county on approach to Conroe. And it was at sunset. It was golden hour. It was absolutely gorgeous,
Oh, man.
beautiful temperature out. It was absolutely perfect. The air was butter. It was the most perfect day that I've ever flown on that bomber. And I remember just as a loadmaster, I was in the waist, so I was back by the guns behind the wings,
Mhm.
behind the engines. And it was open, like we had the doors open, and we have, it just let the wind blow through and whatnot. And I remember my captain was, telling stories and whatnot. And I just looked out the window, and there was a lull in the conversation. And it just, man, you can't beat this. It's
Yeah,
exactly what
really
I said.
can.
And they're like, and nobody said anything, but this is the best thing ever. I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, this is awesome. So you mentioned setbacks due to COVID, which we all had setbacks due to COVID in
Yeah.
more ways than one, some more than others.
Mhm.
How did you navigate these challenges, and what advice would you give to aspiring pilots facing similar obstacles?
Cool. Yeah, so I did run into a little bit of a bind in COVID just because Florida never really shut down, but flying became more difficult because of the pandemic. We took a month off. The school was only closed for a month. Um, but it became really frustrating to me because a lot of times my instructors would get COVID because they'd be out. Sorry, there's a plane flying over. Yeah, I don't know if you heard that. Anyways, yeah, with COVID, it got hard because my instructors I was doing my multi at the time, my instructors kept getting COVID. And so I wouldn't fly, and then I'd have to quarantine for, like, 2 weeks, and then, I was supposed to do my check ride and finish and be done in December, but then my roommate got COVID. So I had to be in a hotel for a few days, and my mom, she was like, "At this point, just come home because it's end of December, like, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, the school's gonna be closed by the time you finish your quarantine, like, just come home." So I came home, I came back next year, ended up finishing in February. I started my multi in August, so because of COVID, I didn't finish till February, and then I started my double I, and then I didn't finish until June because, you get around somebody who's exposed, you have to wait 2 weeks, and then they bring out the vaccine, now it's 5 days, but then somebody else gets it, so, um, it was pretty difficult, and also Embry-Riddle wasn't hiring instructors when I finished, so I had to find a job, and I could not find a job, like, at all. So that made it pretty difficult. I'm very grateful to have found the job that I did because nobody would hire me without experience. And I couldn't get experience because nobody would hire me, but nobody would hire me without experience. So
Just a big old circle.
yeah, it became a round robin of like, I want a job, but no one will hire me, but I want a job. So I networked a lot, really hard, and ended up getting that job in DC. Of course, there's job openings there because who wants to instruct first-time students in DCA? But, um, yeah, so I did it. And the advice that I would give to anybody who is trying to navigate any obstacles or challenges is stick with it. B, network, 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 network. It's so important. Networking is so important. I wouldn't be at PSA if I hadn't gone to that flight school and instructed at that flight school, because someone randomly saw me wearing an Embry-Riddle shirt and was like, "Oh, you went to Embry-Riddle? I went to Embry-Riddle. If you ever need a job, let me know." That happens a lot, right? And I was like, "Yeah, okay, yeah." Long story short, I ended up having to leave where I was living in Maryland when I was instructing in DC and move back to Delaware. And he just so happened to be from Delaware, the guy who saw me. So I was like, "Hey, like, you still offering me that job?" So networking is super important. So that's any advice I could give to somebody who's struggling.
I'm quoting your post from from Instagram here. I am only here by God's grace, and I hope to leave the door open for those who come after me. This
Mhm.
is very commendable of you.
Thank you.
How do you actively contribute to creating opportunities for aspiring aviators from diverse backgrounds?
Ooh, so that is a good question. I am actually a cadet mentor for PSA and also a recruiter. So I do recruiting events. I actually just got off the phone with a mentor before I called you. I always run into people who went to Embry-Riddle and they're like, "Hey, like, I remember you from Riddle. Would you mind helping me with my interview? Would you mind doing this? Would you mind doing that?" I never say no, even when it's like not convenient for me, because I think about where I would be in my life if everyone only helped me when it was convenient for them. I wouldn't be here.
Mm,
There are some
okay.
people who went to bat for me who had to go through some pretty inconvenient things. Um, and so I never want to take for granted that I am where I am. So any way I can help anyone else, I'm willing to do that.
What advice do you have for others wanting to pursue the career of pilot?
Oh, I can't emphasize enough, just stick with it. It's hard. Life comes at you fast and life comes at you crazy. But if you want to do it, you have to stick with it. Now that I've been an instructor and am on the airline side of things, I can look back and see, oh, because I took 2 weeks off here, that delayed my training X amount of time because I took so much time off in between lessons. When you do that, you lose information. So you need to be consistent and you need to be dedicated and you need to be serious about what you want to do. It's not hard. It just takes a lot of effort. So just stick with it.
What valuable life lessons has your aviation journey taught you?
Um, I would say valuable life lessons. I'm always thinking of multiple outcomes to a situation. I'm always thinking ahead. I think of life as the plane. I'm always trying to stay ahead of the plane, which doesn't always work out, right? Because things can come at you unexpectedly. But I think my ability to strategize has been increased tremendously since I've been flying. And once I got really good at flying, this is super random. My hand-eye coordination is insane. Like, it's actually insane. I remember one time my mom has, glasses that my great-grandmother owned, who she passed down to her, and she was born in, like, 1912, so these are really old, and it's real glass, they don't make it like this anymore, and one time, my mom opened the cabinet, and the glass fell out midair, and I caught it midair with, like, one finger, and I was just like, "Oh my god." I'm a better driver because of flying. I'm better at thinking on my feet because of flying. I have really good interpersonal skills because of flying. I am so good at navigating conflict because of flying, because I've had to navigate grumpy captains who've, cuss people out, and grumpy passengers that are angry that they don't have their assigned seat, and there's nothing I can do about that, but I have a uniform on, so they so obviously it's my fault because I have the uniform on, but yeah, I think flying has made me a better person overall. Everyone should do it. It's awesome. Just do it. If you're thinking about flying, do it.
Just stop thinking and do it.
Just stop thinking and do. Yeah.
What do you see yourself doing in the near and far future?
I see myself flying for a major airline as little as possible, making the most amount of money possible, and traveling, getting to just enjoy life, taking it slow at my pace. flying only flights I want to fly, having control of my own schedule. That's where,
All I hear is seniority.
yes, I see myself having seniority in the near
That's
future.
all I hear.
That's the answer. Yeah, I see myself having seniority. That's a beautiful way of putting it.
All right. So fun questions. What's your favorite airplane?
P-51 Mustang.
Oh,
Not because of the red tails alone. I think that's cool, obviously, right?
yeah.
I just think it's a really cool plane. It's fast, it's tiny, kind of, compared to, like, the bombers and stuff, but it's, like, I just think it's so cool, and if there's any plane you didn't ask, but if there's any plane I could resurrect from the dead, I think it would be the U-2,
Okay.
just 'cause I think, like, the concept of flying really, really high and doing, like, reconnaissance is just so cool to me.
P-51. So why the P-51 though? Specifically the P-51.
Specifically the P-51, okay, I lied, it has a lot to do with the red tails. I think it's cool. We watched the movie in high school, I was obsessed. We watched it like 2 or 3 times in ROTC. We got to see it in museums. I've met some red tails, like, long time ago,
Mhm,
obviously, a lot of them aren't around anymore.
mhm.
Um, it's a faster plane. It's just so cool. I mean, I fly a Flying Needle regional jet, and the fastest I've ever gone in that is probably 300, so
I I tell you that jet though, that ERJ that you fly,
mhm.
I've never felt G forces like I have in those little things.
You know what? Yesterday, we had a tailwind of 173, I wanna
Holy.
say, and so our
Oh.
ground speed was 625. That's the fastest we got.
Oh my god.
I'm not even kidding.
Woo.
I cannot say I have evidence because I do not have evidence, but if there were a way for me to prove that, oh, we got a
Oh my
625 ground speed, I could
goodness.
100% prove that.
Anything else you wanna add? What is your favorite part of flying?
I would say my favorite part of flying, probably takeoff. I think it's so exhilarating. It doesn't really get old. You know, you hit the toga switch, set thrust, thrust set, 80 knots, checks, V1, rotate, there you go. Like, that's it. You're up in the air. Um and just hand flying it all the way up and just climbing and, like, the rush that comes from the fact that I am flying this 70,000-80,000 pound jet. I remember the first time I flew, oh my god, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. My first time flying, I had to tell myself, "Okay, Moriah, you're back in the sim. Like, it's just the sim. There's no people in the back. You're just flying." Because when you think about it, it becomes so real. It is so, like you said, nothing beats it. Absolutely nothing beats it. And, I moan and I gripe and I complain about waking up early and 4 AM van times and, you wanna go home, but crew scheduling put another turn on you or something like that. But at the end of the day, the good 100% outweighs the bad, and getting to experience that rush, that adrenaline of piloting a aircraft that could fit all of your friends, all of your family, everyone you know and love and care about, and at one point probably has, is an incredible experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's awesome. Have you ever looked up how much an ERJ 145 costs?
So I fly the CRJ,
Oh, you
the
do?
7-900, yeah,
What is it? CRJ.
the CRJ 7 and 900.
So, have you ever looked up how much that one costs?
I just did. It's a
That's
pretty penny.
crazy. So, how does it make you feel that this airline gives you control over a $41 million aircraft
Oh
every
my
single
god.
day and get paid to do it multiple
Uh,
times a day?
yeah. I have a babysitter, so there's a guy next to me since I'm an FO, I'm a first officer. There's a guy next to me watching what I do, so I can't go too crazy.
But
Um,
but you're
but
still flying it, like, it's
yeah.
yours for that moment in time.
I think it feels awesome. I think oh my god, we've gone on so many tangents. I'm sorry. I have to say this one. I have to say this one though. There is a pastor that I like, and he talks about how he would go to this rural family in Virginia's home, and, they lived next to a train, and so he visited them for the first time, and he walked into their house and was having dinner, and all of a sudden, the entire house shook, like, things fell over, hid the drink in his hand, like, spilled just because the house was shaking because the train was going by, and so then the pastor's like, "Oh my god, like, what's that? What's going on? What's this, like, noise?" And the family's like, "What noise?" Because they've lived next to the train for so long, they became so used to it, and they became so used to the impact and the gravity that it had that it no longer affected them, and so, I think when you do this job for over and over and over, and you have thousands and thousands of hours, it gets so easy to be like, "What train? Like, what plane? I'm getting in this, and I'm grumpy because I don't wanna be here, and I have this sour attitude because crew scheduling did this to me and the wife did this, the husband did that, these flight attendants suck, like, these passengers are pissing me off, like, it's so easy to get like that.
Hmm.
Um, so a lot of times I just take a step back and just try to remind myself, like, "You are so blessed to be here." Like, this is such an awesome job that you have, and every once in a while, the sunrise or the sunset will hit just right where you just can't help but have a smile on your face, honestly. To be up there and to see that and to be like, "I am flying this plane. This is what I do. This is what I get paid to do." It's incredible. I just feel honored. I think that's the only way I could put it is I feel honored.
So I'm looking through your pictures here on Instagram,
Mhm.
and two things come to mind. What do you think about the tie compared to the scarf, for one?
Okay. I had a ground instructor, who was super supportive of me in my journey, and I sent him a picture once I finished, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm old school. You need to ditch the tie. The tie is for men. You need the scarf." I will be honest with you, that tie is absolutely hideous. I hate it. Every pilot that wears the tie thinks it's ugly. It's new. They just changed it. So it
Did
used
they
to be
really?
a different color. Yeah, it used to be black. Now
Oh.
it's this, like
Oh, so they changed it to the silver.
they changed it to the silver.
Oh,
The silver
wow.
is ugly. Um, so I am a big fan of the scarf. Also, you didn't ask, it's blazer season. I do not wear the blazer very often. I'm a big fan of the sweater because
Oh,
the
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
sweater
do like the sweater look, yeah. And
yeah,
the sweater with the scarf?
sweater with the scarf, yeah. I
Awesome.
don't do the tie
And the
anymore.
I can see why.
Yeah. Plus, it gets hot.
So
With the scarf, you can open your neck. Sorry, go ahead.
right, right. So the other thing that I've noticed is when you're getting ready for the day, and how long have you been flying for PSA now?
Actually, I just got an email to pick up my one-year pin today.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanna ask is, obviously, you got the epaulets, you got the wings, you got
Mm.
your scarf, and your badge, but there's also one other thing that I've noticed in
Oh, yes.
4, 5 of your pictures
Yeah.
that is an absolute 100% accessory that you have to have on you, and what is it?
Yes, you're talking about the pink thing, right?
Yep.
That is my pen. That is my Barbie pen.
I love it. So
Yeah,
is that a ritual for you? You have to have your Barbie pen?
I do. Yeah, I write with it. It's always in my pocket because anything can happen and I'm like, "Oh, I need to write this down." So I just flip it out, write it down, whatever I need, but I do not fly without the Barbie pen.
I love it. I love it, love it,
Mhm.
love it. Also, the picture with you in the yellow dress, stunning by the way,
Thank
but it's in
you.
front of the United banner. What was that?
So that was OBAP. So OBAP is Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, huge organization. And PSA always has a table. They always collaborate with OBAP. But United is actually OBAP's biggest sponsor.
Mm,
And so they have a gala. So whenever they do the gala, it's United everywhere. They always do gifts that you can take home. And the gift this year was a United. It looked kind of like a whiskey glass, like a glass you would put whiskey or something in,
mhm.
with the United logo on it. So
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Alright, last few questions. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. I'm a big fan of baseball, and when the at-home batter is walking up to the plate, they have a snippet of a song playing in the background. If you had a walk-up song to your gate, to the ramp, to the airplane, what would it be and why?
Ooh, probably my check ride song, which was "You Can't Stop Me" by Andy Mineo. Yeah, it's this like really hype, like really upbeat song. I actually work out to it a lot. I run to it a lot. And it's this guy just yelling on a song, and he's like, "You can't stop me!" Like that. That's it.
I give him that ditty bop, like take that, take that, take that, take that. I'ma put in work, I'ma do that ASAP. Throw my faith in rap, but it say don't say that, huh? What I'ma turn down for? I feel like Shaq in 9-4, breaking glass in that black boat. I like Kobe in Toronto, huh? Driving 81, yo, I dropped the 88. Ricky Bobby, shake and bake, sleeping on it, should've stayed awake, huh? Everybody make mistakes like VJs, tryna say my name is Mineo. Say it with me, Mineo. Okay, great, 2 forks high, raise the stakes, risk it all, I take the hate. This the winning team, get the Gatorade. My guy good, but he's not safe, nah. They try to shut us down and it ain't gon' slide.
Would you like to share your socials?
Yeah, so I am at the Flying Mo, VETHEE Flying Mo _ on Instagram and TikTok. Not really on Twitter yet. Just because I don't know, I feel like maybe that's not my demographic right now, but yeah, that's pretty much it for everything. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. I will totally get to it when I can, and I'd love to help out.
Awesome. Any shout outs you'd like to make to anyone?
Ooh, shout out to my mom and my dad. They're gonna listen to this, and my best friend Linda. They're all gonna listen.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to sit with me for an interview here on the podcast From the Right Seat. It actually is kind of funny that it's from the right seat because that's where you sit, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sitting in your seat now. You can sit in the left seat.
Yeah.
Your story really hit home pretty hard personally, and is very inspiring for many, I'm sure. So thank you for sharing your story with us, and keep shooting for the stars.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got me. My biggest enemy is me, and even I can't stop me. They try to shut us down and it ain't gon' slide.
Before we land this awe-inspiring flight with Moriah, let's extend our heartfelt gratitude for joining us on From the Right Seat. Moriah's remarkable journey has left us with a sky full of inspiration and determination. Remember to stay connected with us for more thrilling aviation tales. Like, follow, subscribe on all social medias. Mine is From the Right Seat Podcast. You can get the podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you like this podcast, please be sure to share it with your fellow aviation enthusiasts. And if you have any suggestions on who we should have on the show, go ahead and drop me a message on Instagram. Let me know what you think. You can follow Moriah on Instagram at The Flying Mo. That's TheeFlyingmo _ on Instagram to keep up with the latest updates and behind-the-scene glimpses. As we conclude this chapter of incredible stories, let Moriah's journey serve as a beacon of encouragement. Keep reaching for the skies, keep chasing your dreams, and until our next flight together, blue skies and tailwinds to all.